Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out and hearing Father Peter Santandreu give a talk on dreaming without sleeping, the human need for leisure. And I want a special welcome I'd like to offer to those streaming online. We just installed our live stream in the auditorium here to be able to provide for folks this great opportunity for whenever we have speakers from the outside come in. So welcome to those folks streaming online. Let's see, I'm trying to find my space here. So as we approach the Thanksgiving and the beginning of the Advent season, as I mentioned, I didn't mention it. I'm Father Dave Richards, priest administrator here at Our Lady of Pompeii Parish. Tonight we're honored to welcome Father Peter Santandreu to hear his inspirational message. For those who may not know Father Peter, allow me to fill you in a little bit about his background. Father Peter attended St. John Fisher College in Rochester, where he received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Religious Studies and Philosophy in 2009. He went on to the University of St. Michael College in Toronto, Ontario, where he received his master's in systematic theology in 2011. In 2011, he began working as a missionary for Heart's Home in Argentina. Hablas español muy bien? Sí, sí. Yeah, He, upon returning to the United States in 2013, he entered the seminary and was ordained a priest in 2018, just a couple of years ago. And Father Peter presently has two assignments. He's the parochial vicar at St. Emilia Church in Tonawanda, and he also is a minister to the Spanish apostolate at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in Dunkirk. Please join me in welcoming Father Peter.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for being here to what might soon be the last time you're in a room with 30 people for the foreseeable future. But let's enjoy it and let's just make it what it is, because what else are you going to do? This is a poem I want to read just to introduce this theme of leisure. I have come in search of rest and leisure. I haven't much time, for my life is filled with the hopes and dreams, the sadness and pain of others. At this moment I am excused, so I flee. Flee from what drains me, from what keeps me awake, from what dreamless sleep cannot refresh. I have come in search of rest and leisure, in search of a place where it is warm and I am alone, away from my desk and my heavily peopled life, free to dream with eyes open, and to write this poem, the alchemy of turning emotions into strokes of a pen, collecting and ordering words that others might dream, even if they cannot rest. So the topic for tonight is dreaming without sleeping. I wanted it to be as vague and provocative as possible so that all of you on your way in might be, what the heck is this guy going to talk about today? But hopefully, this poem kind of brings us into this space where we can kind of have this element of what is proper rest. I guess that's kind of the question I want to answer today, is how are we to rest? As human beings, but also as Christians and as Catholics, what is the thing we should be doing when we're not at work? Or what is an appropriate kind of work-life balance? I think this is kind of a question that a lot of us younger people or people in the workforce even today kind of have, that what is appropriate? How much should I be working? How much should I be resting? When I'm resting, what should I be doing? Is there a right way and a wrong way to do that? And I think today we realize that there is a certain busyness to life that seems to keep us always on the move. Something that hits right to the core of our actual value system. In some way, this is how we value ourselves, how much we are able to do or accomplish in a day. That feeling of satisfaction that comes from having been productive all day. That feeling of crisis when it becomes obvious that one is no longer capable of being as active as one once was. That might come with the onset of retirement or the natural aging process of not being able to have the same physical strength that one did when he or she was younger. That unspoken pride we feel because we are busier than others, that we are somehow better than them. As you know, in the description of tonight's talk, I had this line about when we ask each other, oh, how are you doing? It's either you can say, oh, good, fine, whatever. No one's going to say, oh, terrible. But another possible kind of write-off response to that is to say, I'm busy. I'm keeping busy. But that busyness kind of has this effect of what? Of speaking to the core of our value system, of speaking to the kind of way we see each other, the kind of way we value human existence. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. What this reveals to us is that at our core, whether we like it or not, we are all infected with this kind of a utilitarian worldview. Things have value because they are of benefit to what they produce in the world or what they can give me personally. I'm always, a few times, sometimes I'm asked this question by my friends or people who don't really, this question comes up sometimes. People will ask me, what do you do all day? And I have to really search for an answer because a lot of time I really don't know. I mean, I get up in the morning, I have my masses, I hear confessions sometimes. I'm busy, I'm working on projects, I'm preparing for this or that. But that question of what I do all day, I don't really know what I do all day. It's kind of feast or famine. If you're talking about Lent, it's kind of packed. If you're talking about, the third Sunday after Christmas, there's not a lot going on. There's not a whole lot to do. But I think that on the whole, what I am is available. That the priesthood is in some way one of the last leisure professions that is socially acceptable in our world. But like this classic ethics question that comes down to this utilitarian worldview of what can it produce for me or for the greater good of society, there's this, if you were in a boat and you see that there are two groups of people who have fallen off the boat, one is a group of two children and the other is one 50-year-old heart surgeon, who do you save? And this is kind of that question that invites this utilitarian worldview. It invites this valuation of the people saying, well, he might be able to save a lot of lives, but there's two kids who have their whole lives in front of them. Is it more important to take the bird in the hand or the two in the bush? Or what are these kids going to be? They might grow up to be mass murderers. We have no idea. So it's this whole question of what is the value of a person? I mean, ultimately that question sets up an impossible choice, because we know that we want to affirm the human dignity of every person. But this kind of thinking is what leads us to accept things such as euthanasia and abortion. I talked about this talk is it's a pro-life talk. It's a way to fully understand what we mean when we say we are pro-life people, that we really want to affirm each other's dignity and live a fully human life. But these people, we might say, for those questions of euthanasia and abortion, these people are too old to matter. They're a drain on our system. They are the useless eaters. They are lives unworthy of life, to use some Nazi-era terms. The handicapped fall into this category as well. They cannot work. Why should they benefit from my labor? After all, Paul does say in the second letter to the Thessalonians, he who will not work should not eat. Now, we obviously know this kind of thinking is wrong, but why? That's the real question. We can see where the result is, and we can say to ourselves, we don't want to go down that path. That's not a conclusion we're comfortable with. That's not something we're willing to commit to. But my argument is that what I propose tonight is that while we know these things are wrong, we still contribute to the underlying attitudes of those who support them, and how appropriate leisure can help us to become more human and create a more human society. That the way we think about things, the way we value ourselves based on our busyness, is feeding into that underlying thought process or worldview that leads to conclusions like genocide, that leads to conclusions like euthanasia or abortion. So it's about two things. It's about what we value, what we really value, and our perception of freedom. If these two things are correct, we will have a sense of leisure as kind of the basis of a culture, which is where I want to turn now. If we talk about work, there was a philosopher, Joseph Pieper, who writes a book in 1948, right after the war. He's German, by the way, so he's like looking at this thing from a German perspective in Germany after the war. And he writes this book called Leisure, the Basis of a Culture. So you know what it's about, basically. Leisure, the basis of a culture. But for him, he kind of sees this time period in 1948 as this like hard reset. It's an ability for him to, it's an ability for the German people really to conceive of how they want to live their lives. What are we going to build this new culture around? You know, we've basically destroyed the culture we just had, so what's next? What's the next turn? I mean, I think maybe for us here in the COVID era, we might also have a chance at this kind of a soft reset. It's kind of this way of saying, well, what's my life going to be like when I emerge from quarantine, when we're able to travel again, when we're able to do the things we normally did? I was talking with a woman a few months ago who, in the quarantine, in that time, had found a very beneficial life of prayer and of meditation. And she was saying to me, you know, I really don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose this new thing that I've found because I know the business of life is just going to catch up with me again. I know that I'm going to be right back where I was, just going from thing to thing to thing and never really having time to think about it. And she was sharing with me a lot of the really important realizations she was making about her life during this time of not being able to do anything. And that's one of the benefits that I experienced personally from that period of quarantine, was just the focus of it. That there was only a few things to do, so you may as well do them well. And I think that's one of the benefits. I mean, if we're looking for a bright side to this cloud. But what the book talks about, this leisure basis of a culture, is this culture of total work. What he uses this aspect of total work, that everything is utility, everything has a purpose. If it doesn't have a purpose, it's not worth doing. This is the sort of mechanization of the human person seen basically since the Industrial Revolution as a resource, considering people as like a sort of raw material. You know, maybe our human resources department kind of feeds into this knowledge or this understanding. And not as an individual, but as something to be used, something that can be useful to society or to myself personally. Now, Pieper doesn't just want that. He doesn't want that at all. He's laying out what he sees as the Christian goal of a society based on leisure. So we've been talking about leisure for a while now. What's leisure? What does that mean? Well, it's not just free time. It's not just sitting on a beach, eating grapes, drinking pina coladas. It's not just recharging for more work either. It's not that kind of rest that we need to go back to work. It's not just sleeping all day Saturday so I can get up and spend Sunday to Friday working my 100-hour-a-week job. That's not leisure. It's I had this concept when I was in mission, like Father Dave said, in Argentina. My kind of concept of food going into it, and still now, I think is a very American concept of eating. That we eat to recharge. It's fuel for the body. It's what we do. We don't necessarily. We eat to live, and this group I was with has a very strong French influence, a very strong European kind of continental thing. So they would be always like setting the table for breakfast. I'm like, it's breakfast. You get up, you eat food, you get on with your day. It's not this huge production, I don't want to have this long conversation over breakfast. But what that kind of taught me was that their conception of living to eat. That this time of food, this time of being together in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening is actually really important. That's the place of encounter. That's the place where conversations happen. To take a moment out of the day to be able to connect with each other and really enjoy each other's company. But I think that's my more utilitarian view of food, is that this is a service to me. This is something I need so that I can do more work. And that's not what leisure is. That's kind of the anti-leisure. I was also, at the end of my mission, I got to spend some time. I went from Argentina to Chile, and it was right around the time that Pope Francis was elected. Of course, the first pope from the New World, from Argentina, where I just spent, over a year and a half. And now I'm in Chile, and he gets elected like 3 days later. And I'm like, I put in all this time, and I missed the biggest party Argentina has ever seen. But in Chile, I was staying with a group of priests from the same group I was with in Argentina. And I remember this very clearly, that there's one guy, of course, another French guy, right? They got it all figured out. And he's sitting in the kitchen, and he's making these mushrooms. I'm like, man, those smell good. And he's like, yeah, that's because they are good. And he was telling me, he was walking me through this whole process of how he cooked these mushrooms, how he found them, what he paid for them. And he's intimately involved in the production of this meal. And he's like, yeah, I put a little bit of lemon in because I hear that brings out the flavor more. And I got the special, I don't know, wax paper, cheesecloth, whatever. I'm not a cook. But he was putting it on there and taking it off. And I was like, wow, this guy really is invested in what he's doing. And he explained also, again, because this cooking was a way for him to show his love to his community. This cooking was a way for him to be totally invested in this process, because he knew that when people ate this food, they'd be happy. This is leisure. Leisure is the investment in something real so that people can enjoy. Now, it's not about selfish pleasures. It's not kind of this Epicurean delights idea either. It's aimed at the real fulfillment of life in the Lord. Leisure is the practice of doing things for their own sake. It is Sabbath rest. It is affirming the goodness of the world and seeking the truths of God. It is philosophy. It is awe and wonder at the reality of this world. I just finished up teaching a confirmation class. We have our confirmation on Wednesday up at St. Amelia's. And one of those gifts of the Holy Spirit is that fear of the Lord. And it comes with the fruit of peace and joy. And I think this is really what leisure gets us closer to, is that fear of the Lord, not in the sense of being, actually afraid of judgment, which, we all should be, but in the sense of awe and wonder, of being able to look at the world and just wonder at it. I mean, when was the last time we had that kind of time to be out in the world, to take a walk in the woods, to see a mountain or a sunset or a sky full of stars, and just be amazed by it and allow ourselves to be taken in by that moment? That's leisure. That's because that's what recharges us. That's what gives us life. That's what gives our lives meaning, is this ability to see through God's eyes and this ability to assess things for what they are. Even the mystery of the other person, the mystery of a good friend or of a spouse, of a boyfriend or girlfriend or just anybody, that to see this other person as something fully mysterious that we allow to be unfolded to us, that we allow to unfold itself, that we might receive it. This is kind of this aspect of a leisure lifestyle, or of a lifestyle that's based in leisure and based in seeing the other for who they are and just enjoying the goodness of the world. So what is the opposite of leisure? I would say it is sloth, one of the 7 deadly temptations, or 7 deadly sins, as it were. When we think about sloth, we think about the animal, the sloth, can't really swim, doesn't really do that much, is basically totally unutilitarian in every respect, but that it's like a laziness. It's like I just don't want to do anything. I want to sit in my basement all day and play video games and, smoke weed and, whatever. That's that kind of sloth element. And that's the opposite of leisure. Now, Thomas Aquinas defines sloth as this sort of sadness about doing the good, this sort of distaste for doing what is right. This existential sadness of I don't want to do it. I know I should go to church. I know I should pick up my little brother from the soccer game. I know I should help my parents more clean up the house, but I just don't care. I don't want to do it. And that can be a sort of laziness, but in the modern era, it takes a different form. It takes the form of overpacking our lives with busyness. It could be nothing, or it could be kind of, like I said, hyperpacking our life, that there's no time for the good, that everything in our life is about distraction. It's all distraction from what makes us truly happy. G.K. Chesterton has a quote here, and he says, "It's not that people have tried Christianity and found it wanting, it's that they've found it hard and therefore never tried." And it's because it takes work. It takes work to develop good habits. It takes work to attain the goals of leisure. We would say that these are objective realities. There is a way to live that is better than another way. There's a way to fully engage with life that really helps our humanity, that makes us more human, not that it's simply a distraction. It's really about this right perspective to work and our human value. So in our country, I think this takes there's the problem of laziness or of sloth in the sense of hyperactivity, kind of comes from this sense of what we would call maybe a misunderstanding of like the Protestant work ethic. You know, it's all about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and making a life for yourself and getting out there. And it's not all bad, but it can be overdone, especially when we come in contact with this total work economy, where you have to be always working, always producing, always doing something for money or for value or for added gain. So everything must have a purpose, must be for something else. What you study in school, whether it's a trade school or the liberal arts, you know, we're seeing all these programs in traditionally liberal arts schools kind of dying off. There aren't any philosophy majors anymore. No one's doing religious studies. No one's getting degrees in literature or poetry. And that might be good or bad, but I guess it kind of speaks to this ultimate desire for what will work for me. It's not a total ignoring of the liberal arts or of culture, but it's in a way saying that what's more important is what I can cash in on. What's more important is what I can monetize in some way. About getting ahead or getting a job or building a resume or working on marketable skills. Now, I talked to a guy years ago, and I told him, I said, you know, he was talking about some award he won and had forgotten about. And I said, oh, well, you know, you should really you should put that in it's going to help your resume. And he was like, you know, in his late 60s, early 70s. And so I was kind of joking about that. But he said, you know, there comes a certain point in your life when you're more worried about your obituary than your resume. And I said, and that's true, and that's true. And that's something, that's kind of also like a leisure attitude. Like, how will we be remembered? You know, what are the things that people are going to say about us? Is it that we had that 6-7-figure job? Is it that we did all this stuff, we accomplished everything we wanted to do in life? Or is it going to be that he or she was a good grandfather? You know, he or she loved his family. You know, he or she was there when I needed him or her to be there. That's the kind of stuff I hear most often when I talk to families who are planning a funeral for a loved one. It's never anything about, oh, he did X, Y, or Z when he was alive. I mean, sometimes if he was like a pilot in the Navy in World War II or something like that. But ultimately, it was just that he loved his grandchildren. They were his life. He loved his children. He loved his job. He loved cooking. He loved baking. He loved doing gardening. I was like, wow, so that's what matters. That's what people remember in the end, is if you were there, if you were present, if you invested in life and were available for your family. So a better question is really, how do these things contribute to a fully human life? Is my goal heaven or simply worldly gain? Now, a Catholic culture, I think a truly Catholic culture, should stand in opposition to the utilitarian society we currently live in. If there's a certain supply and demand element to the world, I think our goal in forming a Catholic culture is to work on these demand side of things, to be people who don't necessarily see keeping up with the Kardashians as a high goal, who don't necessarily see having everything, when you're taking these expensive vacations to Disneyland or wherever, to be kind of, that's how I value my life. You know, these are things that are nice, if you can do it, fine, but this life shouldn't be all about that. It's not, you know, worldly gain is not a symbol of favor in God's eyes. It's not like we can say, oh, because this person is rich and famous today, therefore God must really like him. I mean, we have the example of Christ to combat that God, you know, Christ, God's Son, comes to earth to be totally rejected by the world, rejected by society, to walk the way of the cross, to never really hold a position of power, to not become particularly famous in his day, although rising from the dead helps, but that he never built up that worldly gain, and he never said that God will always be there. He refuses to throw himself off the parapet to be scooped up by the angels when Satan tempts him in the desert, because he says, you know, this is not what I came to do. I came to be a human and a God, a God human, a God man. Not to exploit that, but to really show people that, you know, life's about more than just what we can do. So next, moving on to this element of freedom, that if we become overly obsessed with freedom, we will lash out at anything that threatens to take it away. Possibility of another child, of a relationship of dependence, limits of life and health, any kind of responsibility. These are things that limit our freedom. Freedom is a sort of lightness we hold on to so that we can have pure potential all the time. This is what makes people flaky or non-committal. He's always waiting for the next thing to come along, always waiting for something better, never wanting to fully engage with something. There's kind of this element of an extension of childhood in that is a refusal to commit to anything. And we see this with, lower numbers of people getting married or entering the priesthood or religious life or any kind of thing that closes off possibilities for something else. Even family and friendships have this element of a certain finality that people are becoming less and less comfortable with because they want to be free. They want to have that lightness that I can do anything. I am purely potential. It's interesting, this whole concept of the extension of childhood. It could be because the world we live in today is far more complicated than the world that we lived in 60 years ago, so that people need more time to adjust to it or more time to work out the subtleties and the nuances of the current age. It's a possibility. But we see this even in Disney princesses. You go back to Snow White, you go back to Sleeping Beauty, and you see these women who look like women. But you come up to, Moana or any of the other, I don't watch a lot of Disney movies anymore. But these princesses kind of get these big eyes, these really childish faces, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, because we're still children, because we want to keep childhood going. It's not about, it's not necessarily moving towards adulthood. It's not about making good adults as much as it is about making older children. So that's kind of one of these cultural trends that leads to this over-assessment of freedom, or this obsession with being free. What makes us hate limitations, which leads to not giving things the reverence they deserve, claiming they have no meaning and allowing meaning to be made by the individual, what is true for me. Refusing limits forces us to throw away their meaning so we don't have to pay attention. It's kind of like when we dehumanize the enemy in times of war. If you know the World War II, all the derogatory terms for the Germans or the Japanese, all the derogatory terms for the Vietnamese in the Vietnam War. These things, we have to do this because we can't somehow rationalize killing another human being. They got to be someone who's pure evil. They got to be someone who's totally other than me. And that's a useful trick, in a time of war. But what this does in our quest for freedom is that if we see something with limits on our freedom, we don't want those limits. The option that we have in front of us is to either say, I need to change to accept these limits, I need to change to accept them because they are meaningful, or to just say, well, there is no meaning. Nothing has meaning. That's not important. That might have been important for you, but it's not for me. And in that denial, there's this element of, yeah, you get the world you want. You get a world where you don't have to commit to anything, but you also get a world that's void of meaning, that's void of reality. It's a world that doesn't really exist. So St. Paul says, the monetary light affliction of building up the eternal weight of salvation. The momentary light affliction is building up the eternal weight of salvation. This is a very popular funeral reading. Again, back to the funerals. I go to a lot of funerals, kind of always present in my mind. But in this aspect of the momentary light affliction of our lives, that's what he's talking about, that the things we suffer, the things we have to endure, the things we take on, our responsibilities, our limitations on freedom, are what build up the eternal weight of salvation. That we are to become human beings by what we suffer, by what we struggle with, by the responsibilities we take on. And that if lightness is this potential for anything, heaviness is the actual. Heaviness is life realized, is the trueness of living out a human life. We don't float to heaven in lightness, but enter into it because we have embraced the human condition. We become heavy enough to accept it. Because after all, heaven is really just union with God. The new Jerusalem comes out of the sky to rest on earth. The resurrection is about the body, not just the soul. We need to have weight to live in the new city that God is bringing to earth. We need to be people. We need to be human beings who are capable of living on this earth, not just off in the sky, not this light thing, but something that is incarnated, something that accepts the flesh and its limitations. That value should really be in human flourishing. So yes, we need to work. We are made for work. Even before the fall, the human beings were given the task of tending the garden, of having dominion over the world. So there's always this sense of co-responsibility with God in caring for creation. Human flourishing cannot happen if humanity is not accepted, is not accepting of the limits and the dependence on God. So if we only have work and are constantly looking for more and more freedoms, which lead us to devalue everything so that it can be accepted as meaningful or not depending on how much I want to invest in it, we become bored or burned out. That's kind of the result of this, is that if nothing has meaning, nothing's worth investing in, I just want to be free all the time, and I want to work, and everything's work, then it's either I'm going to burn out because my whole life is about work, I can never rest, and nothing really has meaning anyway, or I rust out, whereas I just kind of disengage. I just opt out of life. I just say, well, life is something to be tolerated. Life is something to get through. Life is something that is here now and will be gone tomorrow, so, well, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. But those are two extremes. Those are two extremes that don't allow for human flourishing, don't allow us to take full possession of who we are as creatures of God. So everything is about just escaping. If we're always trying to escape, there must be some kind of middle ground. If nothing has meaning, life becomes something to tolerate, something that we just move through. But Christ says to us in the Gospel of John, I came that you might have life and have it to the full, and have it more abundantly. That there's something ultimately, objectively very good about being a human being. And if this is where we're at, then yes, life will become just some sort of, if we're at the point where we don't really care about things, it's just a conveyor belt of distractions. It's just Netflix. It's just binging on social media or our over-attachment to work and business. But the goal is to live humanly, to accept limitations like Christ did, to receive all things as coming from God, and to take the time to reorient our minds and understanding to the objective goods of God's creation, to agree with God that these things are good because He made them, and that's what truth is about. So this happens when we take walks in the woods or see a sunset, experience a great work of art or of music. Again, this gift of fear of the Lord, this gift of wonder and awe. It happens when we're in a church being drawn into the wonderful transcendence of the liturgy. It happens when we pursue things for their own sake, like studying or reading or contemplation, not because it will advance our cause or because it will make us look good in the future. We're working on the obituary here, not the resume. There was something I did recently. I was at a hospital and I was talking with some of the nurses and stuff, and we're trying to form a relationship with one of these people, and we see them pretty frequently. And in that, she was a runner. She runs. Now, I only run for strictly utilitarian purposes. I was running because I was trying to get in shape for boxing. So I needed to run, and I was thinking like, oh, how do I? So on my app, on my phone, I was timing myself, always trying to get my mile time down, trying to get below that 7-minute mark or as low as I could to go for however long I was going for. But I noticed that was becoming extremely stressful. And what she was saying is she's just one of these run for fun people. She's just someone who goes out there and just has a jog every day. I was like, well, what's your time? Like, I don't know. It's like, that's incredible. You know what your time was? Like, that's something I'm obsessed with. But this idea of running without timing it became for me a real source of leisure. So I decided to do that one day. I said, well, I'm not gonna time it. I'm gonna listen to my music. I'm gonna take as long as it takes, and we'll see. It was a little stressful at the beginning, but that gave me a deeper appreciation for what it could be. It's just time out there, time to just work on it. Don't worry about what the results are. To receive a limit and to accept it, or to receive and to limit, is kind of the call of human life. That we accept the world as a gift from God, that it is to be received and deemed good, and the limitations we have on life. So this is one of these, this is kind of the central thing about the third commandment, right? Keep holy the Sabbath. There's this whole idea of doing what God does on the Sabbath. All He does is nothing, right? He just made the world, and now He's looking back on it and saying, that's good. That's good. That's very good. And that's what Sabbath rest should be. It should be a time when we can step away from our lives, step away from our work, Step away from the time we spent just in the grind getting stuff done and reflect on it. And think about that. Think about where's my life going? That's good. Or to affirm the goodness of things that God does, like nature, like the outdoors, like each other. And say, you know what? And that's really good. And I had a great conversation with this person. We just sat there, and we sipped whiskey, and we smoked cigars, and we just enjoyed each other's company, and it was such a good time. That was good. And it doesn't have to be this thing of we got to accomplish something. We got to go out there and make this happen, or I need to have this kind of experience, or trying to chase some kind of emotional high. But just being with each other and having these leisure experiences. It's very vague because you all know what I'm talking about, hopefully. Hopefully this is something that is stirring a time in your life or something that you do, hopefully habitually, that fits this category of leisure. That's something that is, I do that. But also to accept those limits, to rest in what makes life meaningful, not what prepares us for more work or simply distracts us from the life we have to get through. Not that we're supposed to be lounging around all day enjoying the good things of life, but that we have time to attend to the things that are truly important. We don't want to wait for retirement to live the life of meaning that we want. I think it's wrong to Dave Matthews, the prophet Dave Matthews has this great line. He says, "The future is no place to place your better days." That it's not enough to just think like, I'll get to that 10 years from now, or when I finally have time, I'll do this. There are things in our life that will take amounts of time that we don't have right now, for sure. But the point being that you can't wait to live. We got to find a way to live here and now, to embrace this human life we've been gifted every day, and to take up a hobby, do something for yourself, do something you've always wanted to do. Maybe it's taking a class, maybe it's starting to paint again, or draw, or just listen to music, but do it in a way that it's not a distraction. It's not something that takes my mind off the numbing quality of my everyday work life, but something that really adds to it and helps me to affirm the goodness that's all around us. The time to refocus on God and to think of what it all means. This is for everyone, not just the well-educated. Enjoying time with family, playing with the kids, or doing all the stuff for its own sake. Yeah. So when we become better human beings, we can become better Christians. Only then can we move away from the ideologies that give us slogans and send us on our way. Only then will we be able to embrace that culture of encounter that Pope Francis keeps talking about. There's got to be something in our lives that just gives us that rest and leisure, that rest, that dreaming without sleeping, that ability to see things for what they are and to embrace them and to affirm their goodness. For me, it's sometimes writing poetry, it's sometimes meeting with friends or good conversations with parishioners, or one of the, like I said before, that kind of last leisure profession. Now, I want to close with saying that my time in Argentina was extremely important for me, because what we did down there was, again, basically, who knows, basically nothing. It wasn't like Habitat for Humanity where I can go and point out, like, I built that house, I put siding there, I did that. It wasn't like you had some kind of bread line that you were always working at to say, we fed, 20 people today, or next week we'll feed 100. It was just being available. What it was a ministry of presence, of being in this house in the middle of a slum in South America, and allowing people to come in and experience our life of prayer. We were available for them. We were called a friend to the friendless many times. Now, people would come in and would want just someone to go with them on the bus to get the news about their cancer diagnosis, or to help them go downtown to work on paperwork. And in that time, the conversations, the time spent together is really what it was about. I mean, they probably could have done it by themselves, but the fact that they wanted someone to be with them was our opportunity to affirm their goodness in a place where their goodness wasn't often affirmed. I remember one time there was a little boy who was being rather rambunctious in our house and saying all these swear words and hitting the girls and stuff. And he's like, 10 years old. Like, come on, man, what are you doing? So I was kind of called in as one of the only guys around to kind of remove him forcefully from the house. So being a bouncer, I'm pretty scary to a 10-year-old kid apparently. So I went down, picked him up from behind. I was like, all right, buddy, we're out of here. So I moved him out, and as I was moving out, he was just biting me. And he bit me so hard in the bicep that I had a bruise there for like 6 months, and it didn't go away. And it was really painful. And I had that temptation. I was like, kid, I just want to smack you so hard because I can. Because I'm bigger than you, I'm stronger than you, I know what I'm doing. But I decided in that moment, kind of a real moment of the Holy Spirit, to say, no, we're here to give these people a glimpse of a different kind of life. We're here to give these people maybe some kind of acceptance or some kind of a turning away from violence that they don't often see. And that was a very crucial part of the mission, was to show them another way to live. And not that we were so great at it, not that we were some kind of savior figures that came down and was like, well, imitate me as I imitate Christ. But it was more that that we just wanted to love people. We just wanted to be radically available for whatever they wanted, and there's nothing to show for it. All I have is stories, right? There's no results. There's no spreadsheet anywhere of quantifiable data points that I can say, that's what I did in Argentina. But in that, I found the love of leisure, the love of this kind of friend of the friendless that I hope to bring into my priestly ministry now. I mean, I've been critiqued for having very long confessions, and believe me, it's not because I'm talking. It's because people who tend to be rather lonely find a home in the confessional. They want to come in, they want to have a conversation about their latest surgeries or medical problems or all these issues, and how their daughter never calls anymore, and how all these things are going wrong in their life. And I just think, well, I'm available. That's what a leisure life can be. It can be a friend of the friendless. It can be a space of listening to people who have no one to listen to them. And I think there's real meaning in that, and there's real potential for that to be a gift, the great gift of listening, not of solving problems, not of being the engineer who always can solve any kind of question that might come up or any kind of inconsistency, but to be a companion on the way, to be more of a Simon of Cyrene, to help the other carry their cross, not take it from them, because no one can do that. To be Mary at the foot of the cross, to be someone who witnesses to the suffering of others, not saying, I can take you down, I can beat up these Roman guards and we can get out of here, but it's to say there's something going on in your life that you have to go through. And the person of leisure is able to sit with them, to move beside them, and to be radically available for whatever it is that they might want to talk about, to make others' lives better, to give them an opportunity. All right, it's better to crash the plane than try to land it 10 miles down the road, so that's the end of the talk. So thank you very much. So I guess we got a little bit of time. If there's any questions or comments or just something to fill the next 15 minutes with? No. Okay, I guess I did an excellent job of explaining everything perfectly, so good on me. No, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your attention. I hope this isn't the last time we're in such a large group, but we move forward. We press on. Thanks, Peter.
As he mentioned, well, first of all, before I go into the closing, if there's any visitors here, this is not our church. We have the church across the parking lot, but we often fill up with the social distancing and everything. So we make this our second space for having masses, so that we can have 2 4:30 masses and we can have 2 10 a.m. masses on Sunday. So that's what we're all doing here. There is a free will offering basket in the back. We're looking to get new carpets on the walls. Just kidding. Yeah, thank you, Father Peter. Thank you all for attending, everyone watching online. Listen, we have one of the most talented music directors. I think I'm right, but in the diocese. Her name's Mary Palmer, And she's going to actually conduct our next Faith Enrichment Speaker Series. She is going to be at Monday, December 14th. She's going to talk about we're going to hear our own music director, Mary Palmer, as she presents Advent Fiat, recognizing the beauty of surrender during the Advent season. And if you can join us, great, and we'll probably try and stream it. Oh, yeah, it'll be in the church. Are we going to be in the church, Sister Joyce? Probably, yeah, because I'm assuming we need a piano and an organ or something. But yeah, so if you'd like to join us for that, I'm sure we'll have to do the whole sign-up thing so we don't go over capacity. Also, I just want to mention to all of you that we have Thanksgiving Mass. We have two of them, 9 a.m. and 10:30. So if you're interested in joining us in worship, please call in to make a reservation for that. That's next week? Starting today. So starting today, you can call in for reserving a space for Thanksgiving Masses. If you can't make it to either Mass, we will also live stream the Masses. Thanks, everyone, again, and have a great evening, and God bless you all. And thanks for coming again to kind of pray with us and hear Father Peter. It was awesome.